What is up, guys? Welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be talking about why Andrew Garfield is my favorite Spider-Man. I know Tobey and Tom are both amazing, and they are also great Spider-Man actors, but Andrew Garfield has always been my favorite since the first time I saw The Amazing Spider-Man 1. Okay, so let's start off with the obvious reasons why Andrew could be my favorite. He looks the most like Peter Parker and acts the most like Peter Parker. He feels so in character when you're doing the school scenes at the high school and stuff like that. He feels so much like Peter Parker. He feels natural as the character. He also feels natural as Spider-Man, which is really great. He has that teen vibe, but he also has the adult vibe of Spider-Man, right? So he's not just being an irresponsible kid. He also has the feeling of being like a mature adult, but he's in between there. So he's also a great Spider-Man because of the acting skills of Andrew Garfield. I think out of all of them, Andrew Garfield is the best actor because I feel the emotion with Andrew Garfield. I do feel the emotion with the other Spider-Mans, but not as much as Andrew Garfield. With the other Spider-Mans, they have some emotional scenes, but Andrew Garfield nails it with perfection, especially Gwen's death scene in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Even though that movie had its flaws, that scene got me crying. That scene is one of the best in any Spider-Man movie, along with the train scene with Doc Ock and Tobey Maguire in Spider-Man 2. Yeah, those are kind of the main reasons why Andrew Garfield is my favorite Spider-Man, but let's go in deeper. Okay, so I don't hate The Amazing Spider-Man 2. People say it is as the worst Spider-Man movie of all time. I don't think so. Actually, I have an unpopular opinion of Spider-Man 2 being my least favorite Spider-Man movie of all time. I like the movie, but it gets really boring. Right? I think all the Spider-Man films are solid, but Spider-Man 2 has a little bit of dullness in the first act and in the third act. The second act is really good because of the train scene and the story with Doc Ock. But other than that, and its character development, I don't think the movie worked for me as much as it worked for some people. But TASM 2 is not as bad as people make it out to be. Sure, there are a lot of plot points, and it makes it a bit confusing. But I think if they cut out the Green Goblin part of the story, this movie would have been one of my favorite Spider-Man movie of all time. Because there wasn't that much going on except for the two villain plots, right? I think Electro had a pretty solid thing, except for the electric eels part. That was weird, how he got his powers and stuff like that. But he did have a solid story of being rejected by Spider-Man, and that was really interesting, and I got invested into his story. Harry, on the other hand, not as much, and he's not really an interesting character. Of course, he is Peter's best friend, and that was kind of interesting, but not as interesting as Electro's story to me. Also, the Rhino suit is amazing, even though he's a horrible villain and he's probably the worst in all of the movies, and he doesn't do much. His suit looks amazing, and I would love to see that suit again. Yeah, those are my villain points of view in TASM, but let's go on to my character points of view. Okay, Gwen Stacy is by far my favorite romantic interest for any Spider-Man because she fits so perfectly in the role, and Andrew and her feel so natural as partners in Spider-Man. Mary Jane and Tobey Maguire felt kind of forced, right? And Zendaya and Tom Holland felt a little awkward and didn't feel natural at all. Still enjoyable characters, just not as good as Gwen and Peter from The Amazing Spider-Man. I think they fit so perfectly together, and Gwen's death scene was the most emotional scene. And it was heartbreaking for Peter, Andrew Garfield's Peter. And yeah, it's such a solid scene, and it does the film justice for me. It doesn't make it worse, even though Gwen does die. Anyway, let's talk more about Andrew. His acting is on top tier. His Spider-Man skills are great. He looks like Peter Parker and acts just like him. But let's talk about how he feels in the world, not being Spider-Man and not being Peter Parker, but being a boyfriend to Gwen, being a friend to Harry and all his other friends, being someone to everyone. It fits so well in the story of him and Gwen's dad. I remember he died to the lizard, and that was also pretty heartbreaking. That was a heartbreaking scene from The Amazing Spider-Man 1. Also, Uncle Ben's death, that's also pretty heartbreaking. But the way he interacts with his actors, co-actors, it's really great, and it fits so perfectly into his story. Andrew Garfield's suit is also my favorite suit of them all. Toby's felt a little awkward, it didn't feel right. Tom's suit is too, like, pajama-y, looks too much like pajamas. Andrew's suit has a lot of, like, cool latex with like really neat designs, like Henry Cavill's suit in Man of Steel and all the other Zack Snyder DCEU films. That's the kind of style of the suit I saw, and I really like it. I think it works so well. Also, his webbing is really interesting, and the design is really cool. Also, there's a lot of stuff I like about Andrew Garfield, and he is definitely my favorite Spider-Man. But let's talk about the little things I don't like about Tobey and Tom that make Andrew a little bit higher. So, with Tobey, he looks nothing like Peter Parker to me. If I was thinking of Peter Parker, I would see Andrew and Tom before Tobey. Tobey doesn't really... His acting skills of Spider-Man are great, but his acting skills of Peter Parker are not. I feel like he's too forceful at acting as Peter Parker, and he's better behind the mask as Spider-Man, because his Spider-Man role, he knows how to do it. He knows how to be the actor for Spider-Man behind the mask. But with Peter Parker, it doesn't fit right for me, and I didn't think it worked with him as Peter Parker. Also, when people die, it's super weird, and his like emotional acting, it feels so awkward and not emotional at all. Especially when he's crying when Uncle Ben died. That fake tear, that was pretty bad. That was ugly. That did not fit well. Tom, on the other hand, he's a really good, charming Spider-Man, and he works really well for like the really young high school student of Spider-Man. Not really leading into like maturity of Spider-Man, just being some awkward, naive, charming kid, right? His Spider-Man role is really great. I loved him in Civil War. I think that was his best appearance. Of course, Homecoming's great too, but in Civil War, you can see him as this really young kid, being Spider-Man, being a superhero, being nerdy. It really fits well with him. But on the other hand, his Spider-Man feels a little off-tone. It works for me. It works. It just feels too much off-tone, as Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man feels really solid and in tone. Also, sometimes when he gets emotional in his acting, it doesn't work as well. But Tobey's emotional acting is probably the worst out of them all. And he has some solid villains. Tobey has some solid villains, and Andrew has some solid villains. But I honestly think that the Vulture is my favorite Spider-Man villain, then Green Goblin, then Lizard and Electro. So Andrew Garfield's villains aren't as high as the list as Tobey and Tom's. But Tobey feels very awkward as Spider-Man, as I said before. Those are reasons why I'd put Tom and Tobey a little lower. And here is some iffies on Andrew. Of course, I'm saying him as the best Spider-Man. His suit, his acting, his emotional scenes, everything fits so perfectly. Also, when he's discovering his parents' like true stories, it's so heartfelt and so emotional, and it's really interesting because you want to know more about his parents. You want to know more about his life. I am so depressed that TASM 3 didn't happen. I would rather TASM 3 than Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 4, just because I just really want to see more of Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man and his acting. It's just really solid, and I can't wait to see him in No Way Home, if he's gonna be in it. But we all know he's gonna be in it. That's pretty much confirmed. I was watching the trailer yesterday when it came out. I had a trailer reaction and thoughts yesterday, and I was watching a trailer breakdown where it showed this scene with the lizard, and in the Brazilian trailer, it looks like the lizard's getting punched or something, and in the trailer, he's just jumping at nothing, not going for Tom, which means they probably edit out Andrew or Tobey, most likely Andrew. But I think both of them are going to be in it, and it's going to be a really solid film when it comes out. So, with all that said, thanks guys for watching. Those are my reasons why Andrew Garfield is the best Spider-Man. Who do you think is the best Spider-Man? Of course, Andrew Garfield's kind of a hot take, and not a lot of people agree with him as the best Spider-Man. I think his movies are really solid, but there's some flaws to them, as Tom and Tobey's don't have those kinds of flaws. But I think as an actor and as a character, Andrew Garfield plays the role to perfection. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like this video and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Let's go.